to the Mini Break, your daily podcast for the biggest storylines, results, and controversies from the tennis world. Today is Wednesday, January 22nd, day 11 of the 2025 Australian Open, now officially in the books, of course, thus bringing an end to the quarterfinal round of singles action. Once again, no 5-set matches on the men's side, but we were treated to such a high level of tennis across the board, whether it be Maddie Keys riding the ship, playing such sound first-strike tennis on her way to a 3-set victory over Alina Svitolina, or whether it was a couple of dominant performances from some top contenders. Iga Swiatek, she just continues to cruise. And that first set she put together against Emma Navarro, an absolute clinic. Now, I am well aware there's a little double bounce controversy midway through that second set. It felt like if Navarro had ever built momentum throughout the course of the match, it was building up to that moment, but I'll address that as well as recap what was still a thoroughly comprehensive victory for Iga Swiatek to advance to another major semifinal. Of course, on the men's side, again, was it a particularly competitive quarterfinal matchup? No, it was not, but you got to see what world number one tennis is supposed to look like, and what Jannik Sinner has done, not just over the last 13 months, but for 25 months now consecutively. The level of tennis we have seen from the rising 23-year-old, it's breathtaking. And certainly last night, again, a power tennis clinic as he earns a straight set victory over 8th-seeded Alex de Minaur. Again, want to break down the world number one, what impressed me most about his performance. And then, of course, look, it's fair to say, Ben Shelton, he went to college, of course, but he already has his PhD in hard court slam success. It is a second major semifinal in the former Florida All-American's young career, a 4-set victory for him over Lorenzo Sonego. Again, Shelton just continues to have this sort of success on the hard courts to the point where you can no longer ask, is this a fluke? This feels so real. And moving forward, for what it's worth, just a fun stat to start you all with, as for what it's worth, we are also live on our YouTube channel here today. For Ben Shelton, this will be his 6th matchup against Jannik Sinner. That's the most he's faced any opponent to date thus far in his career, and given the prowess of each of those two men on hard courts in particular, you feel like that's a matchup we could see 10, 15, 20 times over the next decade. Very much looking forward to their semifinal bout, and again on today's show, what I want to do is recap how we got to this semifinal round, recap everything we learned from day 11's action, of course. Before we do that, couple of quick things. As I mentioned, we're live on YouTube. We're going to try and do this each and every day throughout the course of this Australian Open, and certainly we will be doing this throughout the course of the 2025 season. So if you are listening to this on the podcast, in the podcast format, make sure you go subscribe to our Cracked Racquets YouTube channel. You can get a little notification anytime we're ready to go live. That way, I can start doing fun things like fielding your questions throughout the course of a show, and again, to be able to offer this content on another medium, something we are really looking forward to doing. So again, make sure you're subscribed to the Cracked Racquets YouTube channel, where, by the way, we will fill the void in the absence of tennis here this weekend. We will have coverage. I'm live, so I'm stuttering through my words here. I apologize, folks. We will have coverage of the ceremonial start of the 2025 college tennis season. ITA kickoff weekend starts Friday on our Cracked Racquets YouTube channel. All the best teams, all the best players, all the future successful pros, they're all going to be on display. Again, Friday through Sunday, as we highlight all of the action across various broadcasts on our Cracked Racquets YouTube channel. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out on any of our coverage. We have a ton of preview content available on the Great Shot podcast feed, available on the Cracked Interviews podcast feed as well. So as always, I will ask you to start the show. Make sure you subscribe to each of those platforms. If you could leave a little 5-star rating review on Apple Podcasts for all of our shows as well. It always helps us with the sponsors. Again, lots of fun content happening, emerging each and every day. Lots of fun storylines, each and every day across levels in the pro tennis world. It's our job to create content that covers it all to keep all of you fans up to date. We look forward to doing that across our various platforms here in 2025. Again, make sure you are subscribed not only to this show, but to the Great Shot podcast feed, Cracked Interviews podcast feed, and our Cracked Racquets YouTube channel moving forward so you don't miss out on anything. All right, Plugs out of the way, let's get to breaking down what was, again, a thoroughly exciting, even if not ultimately dramatic, day 11 of tennis at this 2025 Australian Open. Let's start with what was the most dramatic matchup of the day, and I made this point on the last podcast, so I won't repeat myself too thoroughly here to begin today, but I think we can say Madison Keys owns the month of January. Now, I know the immediate comeback that's going to be headed my way. Alex, how could someone own the month of January if they have yet to pick up an Australian Open title in their career? Fair. Can't push back too hard against that criticism of my point. But you look at the numbers now for Maddie Keys. Since January 2022, she is now 30-4 overall in the month. 2 Adelaide titles, a United Cup title, and now her second Australian Open appearance again in these last 4 seasons. Australian Open semifinal appearance in these last 4 seasons. Took a second for things to really get rolling. She played a loose service game in set number 1, but from the start of set 2 onwards, it was all Maddie Keys on her way to a 3-6, 6-3, 6-4 victory. Now, couple of pivotal moments. That 3-2 return game where Keys ultimately breaks for 4-2 to separate in that second set. Talk about an excellent sequence of backhands for Maddie Keys, and it felt like Svitolina made a determined effort throughout the course of this match to fire the serve particularly into the backhand wing, because Keys right now is swinging through her forehand as confidently, as thoroughly, as consistently as I have ever seen. Tried to target that Keys backhand and did have success doing that throughout the course of set number 1. It felt like that was where the unforced errors kept leaking from on the Keys side of the net. But then Maddie Keys found her rhythm, and whether it was, again, her ability to connect with an excellent sequence of backhands cross to set up a forehand inside in that ultimately set up a forehand inside out, forehand inside in to ultimately set up a forehand down the line winner for Keys early in the game. She then ultimately hits the forehand line winner, to break for 4-2 in that game as well. It was just so measured from Maddie Keys. Again, backhands cross for her. She was fine with that recipe. And the thing you notice watching the points play out as frequently as they did, the sequence of patterns, and again, I would point you to that break point 2-3, 30-40, Svitolina serving in the second set. Maddie Keys picked her moments to attack through the Svitolina forehand wing. It felt like Maddie Keys was very cognizant, hey, when I choose to play through the forehand, that's when I'm going to get the short ball that I have to attack behind, that I have to be decisive behind. And so, to Maddie Keys' credit, she picked those spots with extraordinary discipline. She didn't just pick on the Svitolina forehand, allow Svitolina to find rhythm in the forehand cross the way she had in her 2 prior victories against solid competition. No, Maddie Keys was very measured. Fine, we'll do this backhand cross exchange. You're going to leave something short or leave something that she could turn into and go inside in with. And the moment she did go inside in, the moment she did choose to go backhand line, it just felt like from there she was able to dominate with that ball, that next ball guaranteed to come in front of her on that forehand wing, which again she attacked so decisively and aggressively with. You look for Maddie Keys in this match, ultimately won 77% of her first serve points, was making them at a 60% clip. And again, her weapons, that first serve, first forehand combination, it was the dominant weapon throughout the course of this match. Maddie, again, 57 points won in the 0-4 shot rallies, but you look for her outside of set number 1, where she was -8 to Svitolina in that category. She was +4 the rest of the way. And again, so decisive behind that first serve, that +1 in sets 2 and 3. Again, you look at the statistics beyond that. Maddie Keys, 49 winners in this match to Svitolina's 20. Yeah, she had 41 unforced errors to Svitolina's 15, but that speaks to she was the one dictating the rhythm, dictating the pace of point in each and every set that was played. And, for Maddie Keys, 15 of those unforced errors came in set number 1. She cleaned things up the rest of the way pretty well. Again, she gets that one break of serve in set number 2, hold serve the rest of the way. You get to set number 3, they're playing, again, they're holding serve. There's a long service game, but Svitolina ultimately holds there. I believe it was for 2-all. And, again, a credit to Maddie Keys, up 4-3 in that set. What's Keys able to do? Backhand gets hot. Not at 4-3, at 3-2. 2-all, final answer. Backhand got hot. Keys hits 2 winners because she had gotten in that sort of rhythm. One of the winners, of course, set up with the backhand cross court. Svitolina left one hip pocket. Keys able to change direction, comfortable backhand line. The other, a backhand return, ripped winner cross court that, again, ultimately secures her the break of serve that she needs. And for Maddie Keys, that was all she needed. The one break in the second set, the one break in the third set. She held serve the rest of the way in this match. And that sort of performance, again, under constant scoreboard pressure, knowing that you are that break ahead, knowing that for the most part, Svitolina had plenty of success in her service games as well. Maddie Keys looked like a front runner. Maddie Keys looked like she has looked from the start of this month. She is playing the sort of tennis that will just make any opponent uncomfortable because, again, with the weapons that she just has that ability to take the racket out of an opponent's hands and dictate the entire terms of play. And, again, maybe the most encouraging thing for Maddie Keys, she walks out of this match. It's not the biggest margin, but she was ultimately +5 in the 5+ shot rallies in this match. I will reiterate this point again. There's just more fluidity for her in and out of corners. She's playing the on-the-run slice, but that on-the-run slice has a little sting behind it because everything Maddie Keys does has a little sting behind it as well. She had the bigger weapons. She was consistent enough with them, dominant with her first serve down the stretch. Maddie Keys is a thoroughly deserving Australian Open semifinalist, and you look for Keys now in reaching the semifinals. It's her 10th straight victory, second time in her career she's done that, the other time 2022 here in this month when she won Adelaide Australian Open semifinals that season as well. 30-4, again in January since the start of 2022. By the way, according to our friends at OptaAce, only Serena has reached more Australian Open semifinals than Keys since the start of 2015. So again, for a decade, it's Serena. It's her. By the way, Sabalenka has the same amount as Keys at 3, but it speaks to, man, Maddie Keys has figured out how to bring her best tennis to start the new season when she is at her most fresh. And by the way, why is this run feel even perhaps more different than that 2022 run? It's because of whom she has beaten here in the month of January. 6 top 20 wins. 6 top 20 wins for Maddie Keys just this month, whether it was in Adelaide or here at this Australian Open. You look at those 6 top 20 wins, only 19 players for the entirety of the 2024 season had 6 or more top 20 victories over the course of the entire year. She's done that in essentially 2.5 weeks of tennis. It's not just how she's playing, relentless power, first strike, moving as well as she has ever moved. It's how she is playing and who she's doing it against. Just proof that her best tennis, which we have certainly seen, this is the big point I'm trying to make. Her best tennis, and maybe this is nothing new for some of you longtime fans of the sport who have seen Maddie Keys make a major final in her career. But her best tennis can absolutely beat the best in the world and can beat them consistently when she can play at that best consistently. And you're seeing that here to start this month of January. Again, 29 years old, Keys into her 7th career major semifinal. She's now 5-5 against top 10 opponents over her last 52 weeks. Maybe even more impressive, she's also 14-6 now against the top 20 over these last 52 weeks. Maddie Keys is here to play. 12-1 here in the month of January, obviously into the semifinals again of a major for the 7th time. And look, for Svitolina, she did all she could. She got broken once in the second set, once in the third set. There were some moments, there were some opportunities, some deuce points, and certainly a few looks for Svitolina, but so frequently those looks were just evaporated by pace that, I'm sorry, no matter whom you are, you're going to struggle with it, and we'll talk about that more when we get to the Swiatek matchup ahead. There was just too much firepower. It was too difficult for Alina Svitolina to generate anything to compromise Maddie Keys with ease because Keys put her under such pressure so early in this match. Again, you look for Maddie Keys, not only the success behind serve for her, but anytime she got a look at a second serve, it was just Mach 12. Even if that ball missed long, she was taking big swings early in rallies. Again, a fantastic victory for Maddie Keys. 3-6, 6-3, 6-4. She is through to her 7th career semifinal. And by the way, she's back up to number 10 now in the live rankings, which certainly given her level over the last 52 weeks more broadly, Keys now 36-13. Yeah, I think that's where she belongs. Maddie Keys, exceptional stuff. Certainly, again, the most dramatic match of the day. She ultimately prevails with a 3-set victory. as well as she played, it still wasn't your best performance of the day on the women's side. How can you not give the best performance of the day to a player who dropped 3 games once again and has now dropped, a collective 7 games in her last 4 matches? And I believe, according to our friends at Opta Ace, it's the 4th fewest games ever dropped on the way to the Australian Open semifinals. Yeah, Swiatek trailing just 2013 Maria Sharapova, who, by the way, went on to lose that title. Victoria Azarenka winning the title that year. Sharapova, 91 Monica Seles. She won the title. 89 Steffi Graf. She won the title. Again, Sharapova, Seles, Graf, Swiatek. It's a good list. It's the list I would want to be on if you're measuring my accomplishments within sport. And again, for Swiatek, 6-1, 6-2 victory. Not to pat myself on the back, it was everything you mapped coming into this one. As dynamic as Navarro can be in and out of corners, as fluid as she can be responding to pace, redirecting that pace, as broad as her skill set can be, Iga was just better at everything. It's as simple as that. And there was a sequence, 4-1, 40-30, game point Iga, long exchange that ultimately ends when Iga finally given a middle third forehand by Navarro in a forehand cross exchange. Iga plays a high forehand line, high and heavy with pace, lands right on the corner. Then Navarro, who did well to even get that ball back, Navarro left subject to a down-the-line Swiatek backhand winner, which, by the way, she hit multiple times throughout the course of this match. When coaches say, and I had a coach, Ed Nagel, I don't know why I kissed up, but love you, Ed, if you're listening and tuning in. He's definitely not. He taught that shot specifically. You're pushed in the outer third, play the ball high and heavy down the line. Why do that? Because, first of all, if they're going to play a swinging volley, they're going to try and hit that ball cross-court to the open space. And, hey, book it to the open space. It's just easier for you to anticipate what the play is going to be if you do that. Because, again, if they're trying to go back behind you down the line, particularly if you elevate the ball well enough with enough pace, they're trying to take a shoulder height ball, which you're inherently hitting down on. We're doing technique talk here on the show today. Shoulder height ball that you inherently want to hit down on. You're trying to do that over the highest part of the net if they want to go line and try and go behind you as you're trying to anticipate. And if they execute that shot, clap the racket. They're very good at tennis. But you make a bet that they're not going to execute that by playing high and heavy, that the next ball you're going to get is into the open space that you're moving towards, so your momentum will be going back to it. And if you hit it well enough, as Swiatek did in that moment, you get an easy opportunity to use your momentum moving forward, attack behind it. Again, she did exactly that, but ripped the backhand line winner. All of that is to say, when Ed Nagel was trying to teach me high and heavy, when coaches across the country are trying to say, hey, here's why you hit this forehand high and heavy, here's the space it's supposed to open up for you, 4-1, 40-30, first set. The combination forehand line, backhand line winner Swiatek used to hold that game and close out the game. That's what they mean. It was just textbook excellent. And again, I've already made the comparison to Sharapova, Seles, and Graf. It's her 9th win in her first 12 matches against top 10 opponents at the majors. That trails only Navratilova, who had 10 for most in your first 12 matchups against the top 10. She's the youngest player to make a 7th Grand Slam semifinal appearance since Sharapova at the 06 U.S. Open. She hasn't been broken in 4 matches. Iga is that good. I don't know how else to say it. I joke about it all the time. It's not the best jokes come from a place of truth. Not eliminated from the greatest of all time conversation. She is that good. She is that accomplished at that young of an age that you can actually have fun in trying to project, could all of these different things be possible? And again, it's been a while since we've seen Swiatek put together a performance like this. For Swiatek, it's her first semifinal outside of Roland Garros since the 2022 U.S. Open. 2nd semifinal for her at this Australian Open. Of course, she also reached the semis in Australia in that magical 2022 season. 4th fewest games en route to an Australian Open semifinal in history. It has been that dominant. And look, to Emma Navarro's credit, she played 4 3-set matches just to get to this point. You need to play Iga and have a full tank of gas at your disposal. She had nowhere near that. I also do want to say, the length of rallies in this match, the competitive nature of each point. Yeah, Navarro was on the stretch plenty throughout the course of this match. But ultimately they played, I'm doing quick math in my head, they played 81 total points. That can't be right. Hold on. 40, 112. So of the 112 points, 72 of those points went 5 shots or more. there was still some physicality for Navarro, still the ability to extend rallies, still an ability to push Iga into lengthier cross-court exchanges. The problem was she just couldn't hit a weapon with enough frequency to win those exchanges, to thoroughly make Iga uncomfortable. There were moments where, yeah, she had Iga discomforted, but then Iga's able to find with pace line to redirect things and reset the rally, or backhand line to end something, or out cross-court you, because that's just what Iga can do. She's that special in the corners as well. Navarro was good. Swiatek was great. And again, 6-1, 6-2, a little misleading. It was a far more competitive match than that, and I do think for Iga, about an hour and a half, needed a match like this to get pushed within the course of the point, to be forced to be great within the course of each point, while also still forced to have to dictate from more defensive positions than she had over the last three, if we're just being honest. Navarro did ask her those sorts of questions. She just couldn't, she couldn't slow down Iga. Iga was that explosive, was that much more powerful, that much more fluid. And look, Navarro did have a little bit of momentum, because it was very clear she made the decision, start of set number 2, full tilt. I'm going full pace, backhand every time I get a swing. I'm going to play more aggressively, though, more broadly through the forehand corner, serve through the forehand corner, and just park the bus in that corner, play more aggressively. 2-all, long service game for Swiatek, advantage Swiatek. Long cross-court backhand exchange. Navarro plays a very well-timed backhand drop shot. Swiatek seemingly tracks it down with a redrop. Navarro able to get that ball back over Swiatek's head, but Swiatek from there hitting an on-the-run backhand cross-court winner. Immediately afterwards, Navarro goes to ask, hey, was that a double bounce? The chair umpire in the moment did not see it as a double bounce. And truth be told, you watch the point live, you have no idea whether it was a double bounce or not. How could Iga know if it was a double bounce or not? She was on the full sprint. She was just looking to make a play on anything and try and survive and play that on the full slide as well. That's what replay technology is for. And I know in the rules, I don't think you can currently, I believe it was Rob Koenig who tweeted out, in the rule book right now, it doesn't allow for VAR play, and that's an adjustment that they should make in regards to the double bounce at the net. That should be an immediate player can challenge that call, because certainly there is video technology that can now slow things down to the point where we can see with the net camera, hey, was this hit in 1 or 2 bounces? And that rule should be made available. It should be incumbent upon the chair. You shouldn't even have to have a review. Let's just make that call, hey, we have a double bounce situation. Let's go to the replay immediately to see whether it truly was a double bounce or not, particularly if it's in question or point compromising. Can't have that happen. That's an easy rule fix. We'll make that change moving forward. Yes, it would have been great to have had the foresight beforehand, but obviously we didn't. Disappointment. We'll have to correct that moving forward. I do not think that you don't lose a match 6-1, 6-2 on the back of 1 point. And again, more broadly, Iga was better in every category. +2 in the 0 to 4 shot rallies, +19 in the 5 to 8 shot rallies, and that was it. Again, as soon as a cross-court rally started, Iga was the one who determined when it ends. She was +1 in the 9+ shot rallies. She was just a little bit better at everything than Emma Navarro throughout the course of this match. Swiatek couldn't land the first serve at a rate she'll need to, should she come up against against Maddie Keys, who will just be taking these massive cuts on the second serve with more effect than even Emma Navarro, who, by the way, won 52% of her second serve return points, was able to do. But it was efficient from Iga Swiatek throughout the course of this one. 22 winners, 20 unforced errors, about an hour and a half on court, 6-1, 6-2 victory, through to another semifinal. And now the pace awaits, right? Now you have a Aryna Sabalenka, a Maddie Keys, Paula Badosa to a lesser extent. But now we see if, again, having the opportunity to find rhythm, work her way into form, work her way back, I don't want to say from a serious injury, but she was nicked up coming out of United Cup and clearly has had time and space to work her way back to full health, full speed. Dare I say the full peak Iga Swiatek experience. As I mentioned, even in the early rounds, it was quite clear we just hadn't had an Iga run like this outside of Roland Garros in quite some time. If anyone's a winner outside of Iga, it's Wim Fissette. It looks like it is working so far against Swiatek through to another semifinal. Swiatek, 7th of her young career, again, youngest since Sharapova to reach a 7th Grand Slam semifinal this early in her career. It will be Swiatek versus Keys, Sabalenka versus Badosa in our Australian Open women's singles semifinals. Certainly looking forward to those matchups, and we'll spend some time here at the end of today's show previewing them for you. Before we do that, though, let's get to the men's side of things, where, again, No 5-set matches on the day. Still, I thought a high level of tennis across the board, and certainly when you look at the performance of Jannik Sinner, I mean, he got out to a break 3-1 lead in that opening set. Never looked back. Sinner 6-3, 6-2, 6-1. He is through, knocking off Alex de Minaur, won 84% of his first serve points, 27 winners to Demons 10, 17 unforced errors to Demons, 19 unforced errors to Demons 26. Demon went 15 of 38 on his second serve points, and by the way, only made 51% of his first serves, which, as Demon admitted in what was a very candid and enjoyable press conference to listen to, it started with the serve, but it was everything else. The pace, the movement, the depth out of corners. Jannik Sinner beat Alex de Minaur in everything. And Demon made a very clear effort early. I'm not getting you anything on the forehand or wing. I'm playing through your backhand. I'm playing with discipline. I'm going to make this match a track meet. I dare you to beat me in a track meet. Jannik Sinner said, okay, I'll do that. And I'll hit 50% unreturned serves in each of my service game as well. And again, Sinner plus 26 in the 0-4 shot rallies. You would expect that. He has the firepower advantage. Here's the most revealing stat. He was plus 9 in the 5-8 shot rallies, plus 10 in the 9+ shot rallies. He was better than Demon at everything. He had the physicality to last with Demon in these extended rallies. Demon was always on his back foot, really struggled to generate with any sort of ease out of the backhand corner, and never had an opportunity to place freely behind his forehand because Sinner wouldn't give it to him. Sinner, again, didn't make enough first serves. Sinner able to generate such depth, such pace off of every ground stroke, but off of the return of serve as well. And again, the story of this match is Jannik Sinner. It was just thoroughly dominant off of both wings. Any worries you had about his health moving forward after that performance against Rune quickly evaporated, as again, Sinner dominant, 6-3, 6-2, 6-1. It's laughable what he's managed to accomplish. Now 16-5. 16-5 against top 10 opponents over his last 52 weeks. You look for Jannik Sinner. Here's the crazier number. It's not just last year, where again, he's now 71-6. It's 92% win percentage. And actually, let's go back to the last start of last year's Australian Open. 78-6 since the start of last year's Australian Open. I'm sorry, I'm going to swear. That's fucking phenomenal. He's 137-19 since the start of February 2023, which, of course, during that month, he kicked it off with back-to-back titles in Montpellier, in Rotterdam, semifinals Indian Wells, and then, of course, reaches the final of Miami. That was really when things started to take off for Jannik Sinner. 137-19 over that stretch of time. During that stretch, he's 37-5 overall at the majors. He's played a total of 8 majors during that stretch. He's reached the quarterfinals or further in 6 of them. He's reached the semifinals or further now in 5 of them. And, of course, 2 major titles during that stretch as well. You look for him against top 20 opponents. Jannik Sinner over these last couple of seasons, a collective 49-14 against the top 20, 32-10 against top 10 opponents. You look for him during that stretch of time. We can keep going because the statistics are still ridiculous. Over these last 52 weeks, holding serve 91.5% of the time. Again, that's better than the career hold percentage of John Isner. That's better than the career hold percentage of Roger Federer. It's better than the career hold percentage of Nick Kyrgios. During his matches against top 20 opponents over the last 2 years, he's held 88% of the time. During his matches against top 10 opponents during the last 2 years, 88.2% of the time. Again, that's a little less than peak Isner, but that's peak Kyrgios, peak Federer levels, and that's against top 10 opponents. He's still having that level of success with his +1, with his locations, which, again, slice T, kick wide, flat wide, into your body, slice wide on the deuce. He can hit them all. All the serves are available to Jannik Sinner. All of the paces available to Jannik Sinner. He's an exceptional volleyer as well. I don't know how someone that skinny maneuvers his levers as fluidly as he does. It's Jannik Sinner's world. And again, during this stretch of time, February of 2023 to now, again, I read you the overall record for Sinner during this stretch, a ridiculous 137-19. He's played a total of 34 events. He's reached the semifinals of 23 of them. I mean, he's reached the quarterfinals of 27 of them, but he's reached the semifinals of 23 of them. During that stretch of time, again, 34 total events. He's made 16 total finals. He has an opportunity for a 17th here. I hope you all are, I will tweet this out if he wins it, because it's a tweet you save for if someone wins a major title. It's not a tweet you send heading into the semifinals. But if he makes a 17th final and it's, again, a 50% final rate over a 2-year stretch. I know he's only won 2 major titles, and that's where it falls short of the best 2-year stretch of a Roger Federer, a best 2-year stretch of a Novak Djokovic, a best 2-year stretch of a Rafael Nadal, a best 2-year stretch of a Serena Williams. But as I mentioned last year, and he already submitted his resume, there's that room where the conversations are happening, and they're talking about amongst the greats, hey, who's the best of all time? And obviously, again, the 4 horsemen, Serena, Roger, Rafa, Novak, they're all sitting at the top of the modern table. And, again, when Graf and Navratilova and Everett and they want to come hang out, they can always have a spot at the table and they can sit wherever they want, even if those top chairs are open. And certainly there are other players in that discussion. Sampras, they always let in the room. Agassi, they always let in the room. There are guys and women who have put together serious enough stretches. Venus, always let in the room. I could keep adding, let in the room. Like, there are the players who get to have those conversations amongst the great. And for 2 years now, Jannik Sinner's knocked on that door, and the door is now open. They're like, yeah, Jannik, take a seat, young fella. It's one of those sorts of runs that it feels like he is in the midst of, and how sustainable will it be? Again, Alcaraz still has some things he needs to figure out at hard court majors in particular, but boy, it does feel like it's starting to be Jannik Sinner's world again. That sort of 23 semifinals and 16 finals over his last 34 events, with an opportunity for a 17th final if he knocks out Ben Shelton, which he will be the favorite to be, certainly heading into that match. Jannik freaking Sinner, man. 23 years old. For a while, again, it was who can replace Djokovic, Federer, Nadal, these titans of the game. No one can possibly get close to sniffing their accomplishments, and there is such a long way to go. But as I always say, 99.99999% of players, particularly when they're 23 years old, they know they're never going to have a shot at even sniffing that conversation. You smell that? Like, there's some sniffing going on by Jannik Sinner. Dominant in a 6-3, 6-2, 6-1 victory, ultimately advancing to the semifinals over Demon. And again, you look for Sinner now, 20-4 in his first 24 Australian Open matches since 2000. It's the most wins of anyone not named Federer or Rafa through their first 20 matches. Federer and Rafa, 24 matches, also 20-4. He's also youngest player to reach back-to-back Australian Open semifinals since, you guessed it, Rafael Nadal in 2008, 2009. When your comparisons for your achievement on the day is Federer and Nadal, I think you're doing something right. Sinner, a straight set victory. And look, again, I haven't done the glass half empty the way I did in earlier shows of this podcast for the players who were knocked out. There is no glass half empty for Emma Navarro. 4 3-set victories. She found herself in the quarters. She lost to Iga. There is no glass half empty for Svitolina. Looked that good in a win over Paolini. Looked that good in her round of 16 victory as well. Was right there. Got broken once in the second and third sets each. No glass half empty. They each had good tournaments. I certainly think for Demon, he did not play his best in round 3 against Cerundolo. Still wins that match in 4. He had a weird match against Mickelson, but maneuvered that one in straights to get to these quarters. And look, quarters feels like a ceiling right now for Demon. But he's knocking on the door. He's just getting more opportunities than ever before. 4 straight quarterfinals for him at the majors. Yeah, he got outclassed by Jannik Sinner. Everyone has gotten outclassed by Jannik Sinner now for almost 2 years consecutively. So, again, certainly for Demon, I don't have a glass half empty case coming out of this, other than if you, I guess if you're a fan, you think his ceiling is B number 1 in the world, then you have some serious concerns about his ability to manufacture pace, staring down the gauntlet of pressure that a Sinner provides and Alcaraz provides. Obviously, Sinner, that head-to-head's now 10-0 Sinner, so lopsided, that's an issue. Let's be realistic. Like, again, he's already made a tour finals. He's a top 10 player in the world. There's only 10 of those. He's in a really good spot as he moves towards the bulk of the prime of his career. But it's Jannik Sinner's world. We're all living in it. Sinner again, 3-2-1 victory to knock out Demon and advance to another major semifinal. By the way, major semifinal number 5 in the career for Jannik Sinner. He's made 4 of the last 5 as well. Last, but certainly not least, how about Ben Shelton, who again, into a second career hard court semifinal at the majors. He's kind of got a PhD in this event now, doesn't he? You look for Shelton having reached the Australian Open semifinals now alongside of his U.S. Open semifinal run. Fun fact, courtesy of our friends at Opta Ace, Ben Shelton, one of two lefties since 1988 to reach the semifinals at both of the hardcourt majors. Of course, the other one's Rafa. I mean, there's not a huge sum of lefties to pull from, but that's a cool stat. And obviously for Ben Shelton, with his college ties, the 2022 NCAA singles champion, 2021 NCAA team champion, his first player with college ties to reach the Australian Open men's singles semifinal since Kevin Kieran of Texas did it back in 1984. Pretty clean sheet for Ben Shelton on the day. Got broken back, obviously, in set number 2, but was able to get that secondary break to pull away and ultimately close out the set 7-5. Got the opening break over Sonego as well for 6-4 in that first set. Yeah, Sonego played good defense to break Shelton when Shelton was serving 4-5 in that third set, but Shelton played a clean set in the fourth. Both guys go unbroken. It heads to a breaker. A credit to Ben after he took that tumble and the dive trying to extend the rally as Sonego pulled forward to level the tiebreak at 3-all. You thought to yourself, oh man, like maybe this is where Ben doesn't recover. Maybe Ben trying to pull off the magical compromises himself from here. No, he didn't. He gets back out to the line, executes on serve for his point, and then gets the mini break he needs to pull away from there. Again, Ben ultimately a 6-4, 7-5, 4-6, 7-6 victory. I thought he played great defense to get his first break in the second set as well. That extended rally on the break point, Ben able to take Sonego's best forehand shots, trying to go through his backhand, Ben leaving nothing short. Moment he had the opportunity to open up things with a backhand line, he does so. When Sonego leaves that backhand a little bit high and in his strike zone, he's just able to unleash with a forehand inside out line shot that rips for a winner and helps him secure the break. And for me, that's just indicative of how the game has slowed down for Ben. I think earlier in his career, and he's still so young in his career, but in the immediate breakout, because his weapons proved to have so much success right away, he tried to be a little bit maybe too dependent upon them when, as we've learned in the 3 out of 5 set format, there's just an underlying physicality to Ben. He is always going to be fit enough, always going to have enough spring left, not only in his serve, but in his improvisational movement in the outer thirds and the shots he can come up with, his certainty when moving forward. It's best in this 3 out of 5 set format, and his willingness to slow things down, take a couple of forehands into his backhand corner, not play a chip prematurely, but swing through that ball and extend rallies and try to work his way through things to, again, try and get Sonego compromised through the backhand wing, but then also not be afraid to attack through that Sonego forehand as well to open up some space for himself. Just a measured performance from Ben. Only 9 aces. I say only 9 because, again, it wasn't just a serve-bot-esque massive +1 performance. Now let the record show Ben had plenty of success behind his +1, +18 overall on the day. He's only -6, though, in the 5+ shot rally categories. Again, he had to be patient. He had to pick some spots on the return of serve, and I thought he was able to do that with pretty solid success. I mean, again, that serve will be his calling card. He has to be +18 in the 0-4 shot rallies in a match like this. 54 winners to Sonego's 63, but only 33 unforced errors to Sonego's 55. I think that speaks to the pressure he was putting on him physically by sustaining rallies throughout the course of this match. I'd also point out Sonego was the one rushing to the net, trying to finish things quickly. Sonego 67 of 90 when pushing forward. And to his credit, that did force Ben to have to play more defensive because he was put under such pressure. Ben, though, when moving forward, 38 of 49 at the net, executed plenty well. Again, it was a credit to Sonego, who came out with the exact right game plan. Rush Ben. Try to force him to be overly aggressive so that he's not in a defensive posture. Ben said, no, that's fine. Take your shots. Take your pushes forward. I'm serving well enough, getting easy enough opportunities. As anticipated, Ben sliced wide into that backhand corner was just death for Sonego. And when he tried to cheat over to cover it, Ben's able to keep you honest by blasting T on that ad side. And, again, the cutter on the deuce and then blasting wide on the deuce side as well. It was a very sound performance for Shelton. The match he was favored to win, he does win it. And now you look for Ben, who's 59 and 36 overall in his career at the ATP level on hard courts. He's 24 and 9 at the majors since making his main draw major debut back in 2022. Again, 24 and 9 at the majors for his career. It's a really good first 33 matches. The fact that he's made 3 quarterfinals during that stretch of time, as 3 quarterfinals, or further in his first 10 majors as well, and now 2 semifinals in his first 10 majors. both of them coming on hard courts as well. What more do you need to see proven? You look for Ben, who, by the way, holds serve 87.9% of the time. Still not as good as Sinner, but 87.9% of the time for his career in major main draw matches across surfaces. Like, it's just real. It works. The weapons work in a way I think all of us imagined they would when he had that magical run to the 2023 U.S. Open, and honestly, his magical run to start the season in Australia as well. Obviously, those of us in the weeds saw him make the finals of Kalamazoo, saw him emerge as the guy during his run to the NCAA singles title in 2022, saw it at the challenger level. It's always worked. He's always been more explosive. He's always had these weapons, this improvisational skill, this ability to extend rallies now as well. I mean, it's still a work in progress. The return still sits up. He still gets a little sloppy with it, certainly. But this was as efficient of a performance as I've seen from Ben, particularly at this stage of a tournament. And again, with this win, Ben up now to 14 in the live rankings, one off his career high. It's a massive moment for Ben to, again, pick up this 4-set victory, get another bite at the apple in the Jannik Sinner matchup as well. And certainly for Ben, again, big moment for him coming up in those semifinals. But good run for Sonego. Certainly, again, first quarterfinal of his career at the majors and reaching this quarterfinal. He's now back up to 35 in the world. Good spot for the 29-year-old. Again, no glass half empty for you available here today. But certainly, again, Shelton through in 4 sets. And with that said, that's your look at day 11. Now, again, to recap what we learned from this quarterfinal round across the board, here's a fun fact. It's the first time since the 2015 U.S. Open that the top 2 seeds in both the men's and women's singles draws, all 4 players, top 2 seeds in both the men's and women's singles draws, all advanced to the semifinals of singles at the same major. Again, it's happened a bunch of times. Federer, Nadal, Djokovic, etc. Different variations of that. Murray worked in occasionally over the years as well. You look at the examples for the women dating back to that 2015 U.S. Open, and actually it's only happened a handful of times. 2015 U.S. Open, 2016 U.S. Open, 2018 Australian Open, 2021 Wimbledon, 2023 Roland Garros, and now. So this is the 6th time in 30-plus majors that this has happened. Very infrequently does it happen on the women's side alone of late, and by the way, that speaks to the consolidation we're starting to see at the top of the women's game that I've been harping on. But to see it happen for the men and women simultaneously, again, it's been a decade. 2015 U.S. Open was the last time we had the top 2 seeds alive in each the men's and women's singles draws heading into a championship weekend. And how is that not something to celebrate here to start a new season? It also, again, speaks to we kind of know who the best players in the world are. After a 5-year generational transition period where, yes, you still had Djokovic, Nadal when they were still active at the top of the game on the men's side. Djokovic still there now, but this new generation has finally, and it should take 5 years. They should have taken a foothold by now, but they have. And particularly impressive to see, again, as we have the top 2 seeds alive in both the men's and women's singles draw entering the semifinals for the first time since the 2015 U.S. Open, of course. Looking at the various groups we have monitored, over 20 wins for both the American men and women, and of course, each having 1 player remaining. Keys on the women's side, Shelton alive for the men. You look for the American men, they are now 21-18 overall through day 11. The women, now you look overall, they're not 8-10. No, excuse me, the men, I was like, that's wrong. That was the men's college stat. They are 24-13, the American men through day 11. The American women, 20-18 overall. But when was the last time there was a collective 40 wins and 20-plus from each of the American men and women at the same major? Obviously, to have multiple semifinalists that are Americans across the 2 draws as well. Exciting start up to the year for the 2025 Americans in a year where it does feel like they have enough talent, they have the depth. Maybe you say they're lacking a little bit the top end talent on the men's side, but enough bites at the apple that you can get a Shelton, a Fritz, a Paul, any of these guys into the semifinal round and at least give them a fighting chance. Great start again to the year for the Americans, 20-plus across the board, and again, a collective 43 wins, I believe it was, right? 23-15 and 24-13, 20-18, a collective 44 wins across the board. For the players with college ties, they're now officially eliminated on the women's side, with Navarro getting knocked out again, 8-10 overall for the women with college ties, but Navarro, Schneider, Collins, obviously had Stearns drawn anyone else but Navarro. I think she maybe gets to the second week with the level we've seen from her to start the season. Kessler won a tournament the week before. Things are certainly pointing up on the women's side and on the men's side as well. Ben Shelton, another semifinal. Again, first since '84 for the college men to have someone with ties in the Australian Open men's singles semifinal. You look for the college men 21-18 overall through day 11. Again, the college women finish 8-10 overall for the tournament. For what it's worth, no one left 21 and under in this tournament entering the semifinal round, and certainly with Alcaraz's success of late, he's been in the scene. When Swiatek was 21 and under, she was a part of the scene. Goff still has a runway to be a part of that 21 and under scene. For now, it belongs to those players a little closer to their primes. Again, the 23-year-old Jannik Sinner, the 22-year-old Ben Shelton, 23-year-old Iga Swiatek. It's still a young group, but for what it's worth, again, the 21 and under crew eliminated thus far as well. I will say, looking at the Tennis Abstract singles forecast heading into this, stayed pretty consistent. On the women's side, Swiatek, Sabalenka, neck and neck. Sabalenka, the slight favorite, which, again, she's won 19 straight in Melbourne. Hard to argue against that, but Sabalenka 45.6%, Swiatek 40.4%. Badosa, the slight edge to Keys, even though she has the Sabalenka matchup up next, probably speaks to the fact that she's 36-11 or 37-11, something crazy like that since the start of May. Badosa 7.7%, Keys 6.3%. And then last but not least on the men's side, it's been, again, you hope someone loves you someday the way the Tennis Abstract singles forecast loves Sinner, this tournament. Sinner, 74.5% favorite. Djokovic, 19.5%. Zverev, 5.5%. Shelton, 0.5%. That's a little mean to Ben. If he serves well, on the right day, he can beat anyone. 0.5 feels disrespectful to the likelihood that he serves well, and just him in that atmosphere, his ability to make magic happen. Now, again, Sinner just won 3-2-1, and I just waxed poetically about how his 2-year run has knocked down the door and entered the conversation of the greatest of all time. Get to be like, hey, nice 2-year run you're having. Tell us about it, because we remember ours. He should be the favorite. 74.5 is selling a man by the name of Novak Djokovic, who probably sits at the head of that table a little bit lightly. Again, Djokovic 19.5%, Zverev 5.5%, Shelton holding strong at the 0.5%. Better than the 0.0 it gave Sonego, so at least there's that. That said, again, as we look ahead to day number 12, semi-final action ahead. Sabalenka versus Badosa. Swiatek obviously going to be taking on Maddie Keys. You look at the career head-to-head matchups between these two. Sabalenka 6-3 head-to-head advantage. No, that's not true. That's her record against top 10 opponents. Sabalenka 5-2 career head-to-head advantage against Badosa. She's also won each of the last 5 encounters after losing the first 2 to Badosa. They've played on hard courts 3 times in their career to date. Badosa 2-1, but again, both of those wins back in 2021. Sabalenka, the win in Miami last season, 6-4, 6-3, although again, that was before Paula Badosa went on this run, where indeed she is 37-12 since the start of May. You look for her during that stretch of time, 8-8 against the top 20, 3-5 against the top 10. Obviously, she has made quarterfinals, had back-to-back majors, and is into the semifinals of the major here in Australia for the first time in her career. I mean, look, we could discuss, well, Badosa has the strength. She has the size to the forehand line. If she can catch it early, play it down the line well, she catches the backhand cross and keeps Sabalenka honest in that corner. Certainly she'll have some opportunities to open things up for herself, play forehand inside in, and pressure that Sabalenka on the run forehand, which, while at times magical, can also be a little bit leaky. All of that's great hypothetically, and certainly Badosa has the requisite strength. She has the requisite weapon. She has the requisite confidence. She can play freely. She's playing the 2-time defending champ and world number 1. As we have learned in the month of January, I've talked about Keys and Swiatek quite glowingly here on this show, but keep in mind, again, Sabalenka also hasn't lost this season. Sabalenka also has won 19 in a row. Sabalenka got compared to Serena on this show yesterday in reaching 3 straight Australian Open semifinals. I think she's the first player to do it since her, or no, maybe it was 6 straight hard court slam semifinals, first to do it, since Serena. I mean, again, it's on Sabalenka's racket. If she serves well, if she's striking the return well, and certainly the second serve will be an issue for Badosa, for Sabalenka to feast upon, even more so maybe than vice versa. The match is on Sabalenka's racket. It's always on Sabalenka's racket. And you look for Arina Sabalenka again during this remarkable run. Not only is she 5-2 against Badosa, but again, since the start of the 2022 U.S. Open, where she has made the quarterfinals or further in every major since, she's 12-3 against top 20 opponents during that stretch of time. That not good enough for you? Fine. Against the top 10, 4-3 during that stretch of time as well. By the way, all 5 of her losses at the majors since the start of that 2022 U.S. Open have been in 3 sets. So you know at a minimum, Sabalenka's getting a set. Obviously, she just got pushed in her 3-set match against Pavlyuchenkova. Pavlyuchenkova plays with a pace and a decisiveness in playing that pace in a way Badosa doesn't. Badosa wants to work her way into the point physically. Now, Badosa has struck the ball with pace line and with a discipline and being willing to play a little defense when her opponents were willing to give her some errors, Goff in particular, in the last match. But Goff trying to play with pace is different than a Sabalenka pace where you know it's going to come in hard and flat no matter what. I just lean Sabalenka. I think she's better at everything. I think her slice serve wide into that Badosa forehand kind of takes away Badosa's eagerness to take that ball on the rise and short hop at line because it's just really hard to do that against that Sabalenka serve when executed well. I predicted before the tournament we get a Sabalenka-Swiatek final, and I'm certainly sticking with the Sabalenka side of the equation as Sabalenka, again, 5-2 in the career head-to-head. This is just, she's had the day off as well after the 3-setter against Pavs. I think it's first semifinal for Badosa. I just think Sabalenka is prepared for this match. I think she will bring her best tennis, and that best tennis is very, very difficult to beat. Give me Sabalenka to advance ultimately to another Australian Open final. And then on the Swiatek Keys side of things, Swiatek 4-1 in the career head-to-head. 1-1's the record on hard courts. Keys a 1-0 victory over, Swiatek a 1-0 victory over Keys at the advantageous Indian Wells surface, where there's a world where Swiatek doesn't lose another Indian Wells match for the next decade. Swiatek 1-0 over Maddie Keys there when they played in Cincinnati, a quicker surface. Maddie Keys 3-4 victory over Swiatek. That was 2022. Again, they haven't played on hard courts other than those 2 matches. Swiatek 4-1 overall in the matchup. They've never played a 3-set match between them. Keys is playing well enough to force a third. Keys is serving that well. Keys is playing with that sort of decisiveness in the outer thirds. Behind the return and playing with a pace whenever anything is left hip pocket or short of the service line, and definitively changing direction and moving forward and pressuring opponents and knocking off overhead successfully. Maddie Keys is executing the sort of aggressive power tennis you need to play with to beat Iga Swiatek. And if Iga doesn't serve particularly well, if there are second serves sitting short in the box, Maddie Keys will be prepared and is executing well enough to pounce upon those semifinals, those second serves. There's also a looseness. This is why I said semifinals. There's also a looseness to Keys entering these semifinals in a way I just don't think she had early in her career where, look, she's not chasing world number 1. She's chasing a major title. And, of course, if in the quest for that major title she emerges as the world number 1, as the best player in the world in any given moment, I think that would be a wonderful, best sort of sense consequence of those achievements. But Maddie Keys is focused in the moment, the here and now, not how this match affects the narrative surrounding her moving forward. And obviously, the further you progress into your career, the less you care about the outside noise surrounding it. But for someone who had so many expectations upon her and talked openly about how those expectations impacted her, there's just a freedom. Maddie Keys, maybe I'm projecting onto the success, but she's swinging with the freedom you need to swing with and will go after things aggressively the way you need to against Swiatek to make this a fight. And certainly in all the matchups Swiatek has ultimately faced in this Australian Open, she finally faces someone who can execute with the sort of firepower and consistently enough with that firepower to test her, to push her, to force her upon her back foot. Problem is Swiatek is executing so well when pushed onto that back foot right now, and she has had a week and a half to work her way into the optimal levels of fitness, optimal levels of form. She hasn't been broken in 4 matches. The problem is when she gets Keys stretched to the outer third and Keys plays the slice, that ball is now going back into the outer thirds in a way that will just force Madison Keys to move uncomfortably. Again, Swiatek, a once-in-a-generation returner. She's going to be able to generate better depth and kind of take away that wide serve that Keys played so effectively against Svitolina, because you just can only serve through the Swiatek backhand so frequently. Now, Keys has executed the T-serve fine on the ad side. She served really well wide on the deuce side to open up +1 opportunities for herself in the Svitolina match as well. But Iga's just a different beast out of those corners. There's more depth. There's more action on the ball. There's more pace in what she does. Now, again, Keys will swing well, and when she's swinging well, she will have success in this match. I just don't think anyone's slowing down this version of Iga Swiatek, short of Aryna Sabalenka, who is more dynamic in the corners and will be able to swing through the ball more fluidly when pushed there than Madison Keys, who is moving better and playing a more effective defensive ball from those corners. I just don't think it's enough. I think Swiatek pulls through. I think she is playing that well, and I think we will finally be treated to the thing we have been looking for more than anything for 2 years now in the women's game. We will finally be treated to a Sabalenka-Swiatek Grand Slam final. That's my thoughts. Those are my predictions, my preview. Sticking with an all-Swiatek-Sabalenka final as I picked pre-tournament, as I think I've picked for every major now for the last 7 consecutively, because why not? Predict and pick the thing you hope to happen, the thing that would be the most entertaining outcome for all of us tennis fans. So I also think they're playing the 2 best of anyone in the tournament. But again, Keys and Badosa certainly playing well enough to be in this round. They'll each push. They'll each hold their own. Give me Swiatek. Give me Sabalenka advancing to the finals. And, certainly, again, quick super forecast, Shelton 1-4 in his career against Sinner, but he did beat Sinner on hard courts, albeit 2023 Shanghai Masters event. You also have Zverev 4-8 in his career head-to-head with Djokovic, but of course the last time they played at a major, a thrilling 5-set victory for Djokovic on his way to that 2021 U.S. Open final. That may just have sapped all of his energy just enough to prevent him from capturing that calendar slam. Those are great matchups. Zverev is playing well enough to win. Now, it certainly helps for Djokovic, who looked a little nicked up after that Alcaraz match. He's had 2 days off before then. Zverev is serving well enough. The problem is just who's the most consistent, not only physically, but mental player in these moments, and is just going to pressure you whenever the moment gets big. Novak Djokovic will do exactly that to Sasha Zverev. He's not going to hand him 3 forehand unforced errors, trying to serve out a second set the way Tommy Paul did. I mean, again, I picked Djokovic to win the tournament beforehand, so I'll stick with Djokovic Sinner as the final, as I picked before the tournament. I also think Ben, he's just going to he has the weapons to do what he wants to do, regardless of what Jannik's doing on the other side of the net, and he will rise to the occasion. But 3-2-1 over Demon is just ridiculous. So I'll take the most logical, but maybe most boring predictions I'll offer to you. Sinner Djokovic, Swiatek Sabalenka. Those my read for the early Australian Open finals. I'll stick with my pre-tournament picks. And again, first time since the 2015 U.S. Open that things have gone this well to script, that the top 2 seeds for both the men and women have ultimately reached the semifinal round of play at the same major. Of course, with that said, that's everything from day number 11, and that's previewing all things day 12 for you here on this show. Now, again, we will be back tomorrow to offer you a recap of all things day number 12. Of course, after that, we'll be live pretty much all day long, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, covering all things 2025 ITA kickoff weekend, the ceremonial start to a new college tennis season. You want to know who the next Ben Shelton, the next Emma Navarro may be? Hit subscribe today so you can tune into all the coverage, watch all the best teams, watch all the best players compete for a spot at the National Indoor Championships. Of course, a shout out and thank you as always also to the tireless efforts of our super producer Daniel Westa for the fuck of an editing job he does day in, day out, making all of our content possible. Of course, with that said, for the fantastic Daniel Westhoff and from all of us here at both Cracked Racquets and the Tennis Channel Podcast Network, I'm your host, Alex Gruskin. You know what we say. That's the break, and we'll talk to you all tomorrow. Thanks, everyone.